Okay, so my critique, I've got a critique of the presuppositional methodology I'm curious to hear your response to.
Okay.
So essentially, the precept method is going to be, they're going to have the conclusion that essentially the God worldview is the only worldview that can account for intelligibility. Right. And the method to demonstrate something like this is going to be to do a worldview analysis, usually. So they're going to set you up, two different worldviews, the God worldview and the not God worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to take on the presuppositions of your opponent's position and do an internal critique to demonstrate that their worldview fails on their own grounds. Now, the problem is that I don't think this can deliver on its promise. The reason being is there are some worldviews that are just not in principle falsifiable. That is, that any given proposition that you could posit is going to be symmetric with their position. Positions like trivialism, positions like dialetheism. There's plenty of different paraconsistent logic positions. Each one of these is not going to be in principle falsifiable. And so my critique is that if there are any non-falsifiable worldviews, just in principle, then the methodology can't deliver on its promise.
Right. And I understand this critique. I've heard it many times. And where I think this critique fails is that it's not understanding the larger claim of the transcendental argument. So the transcendental argument is not just making a claim about the intelligibility of worldviews. It's actually, the way I argue it, is it's an argument for an entire paradigm. So the reason that those objections don't work is that those objections don't actually give an account for the paradigm as a whole. So the argument is that Orthodox Christianity provides an account for all the elements and presuppositions that go into a coherent worldview, and thus it can provide a ground and a justification for all the transcendental categories and the possibility of knowledge and the possibility of ethics and the possibility of metaphysics. And so the examples that you gave are too limited in scope in that they can't give an account for any of those things that the paradigm as a whole for a Christian can give an account for.
So something like trivialism that wouldn't apply to, right? Like trivialism would hold that all of your positions, all of the positions that are the Eastern Orthodox position would be contained within trivialism. All propositions would be true. So unless you can, like, if the methodology is to attempt to falsify the opponent's position, right? Like,
how does that position?
It's not just like an external critique from that position.
How does that position give an account for all of the transcendental categories?
It's going to be identical to your position, right?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be giving an account for the history of Christianity, the meaning of man and history, his origins, by just simply saying that, well, I have your position that includes all positions, right? That's not actually a position.
That's not what?
That's not actually a position that gives an account for the transcendental categories.
I mean, it might not be a position people hold, but it is actually a position.
It's not a position that gives an account, and that's what we're looking for here. It's not just any position. It's a position that has to give an account for the possibility and the presuppositions for the preconditions for knowledge.
I'm curious. Do you have like an understanding of what trivialism is?
No, I heard you say it, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so trivialism would be it's going to accept some kind of dialectic logic, and it's going to say every proposition that is possible is true, all of them, right? So any proposition that is contained within a system is going to be symmetric with the position of trivialism. So if you hold the Eastern Orthodox position is going to be contained within the system of trivialism. So if trivialism cannot provide an account, then the Eastern Orthodox cannot provide an account.
Yeah, but see, you're assuming that the way that you would demonstrate this position is that it's like this theoretical position that's purely abstracted that supposedly includes any other position, right?
I mean, it would be something like that. It's
right, but like what I'm saying is that doesn't function to resolve the issue of grounding and justification for all of the transcendental categories. And so it's not actually subsuming my position, because my position has a mutual exclusivity that doesn't allow it to be subsumed under any other position.
That would actually be true also under trivialism. So trivialism, all propositions.
Then that's a incoherent philosophy. That doesn't actually work. So you can't subsume mutually exclusive positions just by saying, well, I include your position in my position. That's not actually a real position.
I mean, whether or not it's a real position, it's a hypothetical position.
So then it doesn't work to but I'm interested in a worldview that grounds real positions and reality, and that position doesn't do that. So it's not grounding anything. It's just a hypothetical that doesn't do any grounding work.
It would do the same grounding work that your position would do. If your position...
No, it doesn't, because my position is mutually exclusive to that position that's not a real position. Your position doesn't have anything... Do you agree? Do you understand that my position is mutually exclusive to yours?
No, it's not.
It is.
They're not.
It is. Because it makes a totality claim for an entire paradigm. So what you're talking about isn't even a thing.
I mean, it is a thing, but...
It doesn't get if it doesn't ground a paradigm, then it's not a thing.
Imagine I took all the propositions that you hold, all of them.
You are thinking of a position as if it can be a purely hypothetical, and I'm asking for a grounding of things like history, meaningful history, of ethics in reality. So your position, by definition, cannot do that. So it's not actually a thing.
Well, then you would have to hold also that your position can't do that if that follows, right? Like that, if trivialism...
No, my position is an argument about reality and history. Do you understand what I'm saying, that it's a paradigm level argument? And you're trying to say, I'm going to avoid that critique by acting like there's a hypothetical that avoids paradigm level argumentation.
Yeah, I don't think you're responding to the position, if I'm honest.
I'm sorry that you think that, but I am responding to it.
Can you maybe give me an idea of, like, repeat back to me what you think the position I'm talking about is? Like,
you're saying that you can create a hypothetical that is unfalsifiable by subsuming my position under this hypothetical position. And I'm saying that this has the appearance of argument, but it doesn't actually work, because what I'm asking for grounding and justification is not a mere hypothetical. A hypothetical can be useful in an argument, such as possible world arguments, right? But possible world arguments can't function as justification and grounding.
So think about it like this. Maybe I can, because I still don't think you're responding to it, but I'll try again really quickly. So if I take all the propositions you hold to be true, and I hold all those propositions...
Yeah, but you're misunderstanding that one of the propositions in my worldview is that no other worldview can be combined with this worldview. It's mutually exclusive. So you can't just subsume it under a position.
And that would be true under trivialism as well. So all of those...
No, it wouldn't. It would be contradictory.
And that's okay under trivialism. So that's why...
Okay, so if a position can be contradictory, then you've lost the argument from the outset.
Well, that's just an external critique. That's exactly
no, it's not. It's a critique from internal to that system that you're arguing for. If your system accepts contradictions, then it's not. You can't argue.
I don't think you understand.
I do understand it, and what you're saying is retarded.
That's just an external critique, but okay.
It's not an external critique because it's a critique from what you said the system is. How is it an external critique when it's from what you're saying that you can contradict within your arguments, right? Within your worldview. This is what you have to resort to. This is what the atheist has to resort to. I can come up with this non-existent hypothetical thing that doesn't do any grounding, and it allows for contradictions, but it's unfalsifiable. That's what you're arguing.
That's the problem.
That's retarded. Exactly. That's why you're gone. Goodbye. So this is what these guys are left with, right? This is what they're left with. Literally the dumbest shit I've ever heard. All right. Talk about sophistry and like the appearance of argumentation. I mean, how does he think that grounds anything?
Because it has every proposition of your worldview.
No, my worldview is not a set of propositions. It's also a view of worldviews as a whole. So atheists like to think of worldviews like a set of propositions. That's not what a worldview is. Propositions are part of a worldview, but it also has to give an account for history. It has to give an account for ethics. It has to give an account for all these things, which are prior questions. So to come up with a hypothetical and say, well, I have a hypothetical worldview that encompasses every potential worldview, and it allows for contradictions. There's no such thing as a privileged epistemic position that allows for contradictions that's non-falsifiable, right? You can't have any kind of system at all if your system admits contradictions. I mean, just the level of stupidity of these people is just mind-boggling.